Okay, welcome. So this is video 7 of our 8 video series on everything you need to know about healing your trauma. So this is the part where we talk about your healing path, and we're going to dive a little deeper in a few of the healing points, and I'm really looking forward to it. So let me just share my screen. This is part 1 of your healing path. Okay, here we go. So we talk about what to expect, right? Just want to remind you, this is designed to be experiential. So we have a workbook that you can access. And also there's points where you can stop and journal, not so much in this presentation, but throughout the 8-session video experience. There's a lot of opportunities to be journaling. So I hope that you've taken advantage of that self-reflection time. If you have, it will pay off in this section of the video series. So if you haven't, though, you can certainly just pull out that workbook and get at it now. So today's topics, right? Stages of change, stages of trauma recovery. We're going to do a little bit of an assessment. And I'm just going to encourage you to do some skill development as well, right? So I want to say trauma creates changes you don't choose, right? So healing is all about creating change that you do choose, right? So this is about your healing path, right? What are the changes that you're going to choose? So this is the big scary truth about trauma. There's no such thing as getting over it. You know that by now, right? The 5 stages of grief model marks universal stages in learning to accept loss. But the reality is, in fact, much bigger. And anyone who's been through a major loss understands that, right? A major life disruption leaves a new normal in its wake. There's no back to the old me. You are different now, full stop. You also know that. This is not a wholly negative thing. Healing from trauma can also mean finding new strength and joy. The goal of healing is not a papering over of changes in an effort to preserve or present things as normal. It is to acknowledge and wear your new life, wisdom, warts and all, with courage, right? So that's what we're talking about when we're talking about healing complex trauma. Because remember, authenticity and attachment go hand in hand, right? So being your authentic self and offering your gifts into the world, super important. So this is a funny little slide to see complicated PTSD bingo, right? Like, what do you got? And this is for my complex trauma survivors, right? And also for my bereaved parents. Anyone who's been through something or a collection of events kind of gets the same response. So you might have a big T trauma, you know, like the loss of a child, but you might have a collection of trauma that creates the same thing. So it can happen all at once or it can happen over time, but the result is the same. So is it panic? Is it anxiety? Is it dissociation? Is it low self-worth, flashbacks, avoidance, paranoia, right? Garbage sleeping, right? Can't remember anything, or you remember too much. Avoidance, right? Somatization, that's where your body has symptoms that you don't understand. Okay, so you know that's because of the nervous system dysregulation, right? So I like this slide because it kind of gives you this idea like, oh, figuring out what to address, right, is difficult. And for us as a therapist, right, it compounds the complexity of the treatment plan. Like, what do we work on first? And that's why, for me, this 3-stage model is gold, right? Stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. I don't need to work my way through all of these things or wade through them. I just know we're going to start with your stage 1 grounding. We're going to move into your limiting beliefs, and then we're going to integrate the change. The way that we do it is going to be unique to you. Okay? So remember, the trigger is in your nervous system. So a trigger is anything that sets you off emotionally and activates memories of your trauma. It's particular to you and what your experience has been. triggered, we revert to the feelings and behaviors we had in the traumatizing situation, or to behaviors we had in previously traumatizing situations, right? If we get triggered. So, yes. Here we go. This slide, I like it. How to cope with triggered memories. This is a great slide to take a picture of, to have on your phone. Move your body, right? Use grounding techniques, go outside, practice cozy self-care, let emotions be, try tapping, get support. Okay, so you're not going to do all of these all at once, right? Remember, small steps. Even good change is hard. Choose one, do it, okay? You have in here a whole bunch of choices. Right? And now you know why and when. And maybe you don't, you're going, I don't know why and when, Vanessa. So if you're really, really dysregulated, right? Dysregulation craves support. So you're trying to bring yourself back into your window of tolerance when you're very dysregulated, and then you can work through things, right? So when you're triggered, you're dysregulated, okay? So you're trying to find things that bring you back into your window of tolerance before you start problem solving. Your problem when you're triggered isn't the problem. Your problem when you're triggered is that your nervous system is dysregulated, okay? Do you need me to say that again? Your problem when you're triggered isn't the problem. Like when we get triggered, we think there's this problem that we need to solve. And very often there's nothing to solve. It's just we're triggered. So we're stirred up and our brain starts to process things. So very often when we're triggered, what we need to do is solve the problem of being dysregulated, okay? Not the problem that we think is happening, because often there's no problem, right? So here you go. Here's another wonderful, wonderful slide. I love this one that talks about the pros and cons of the various techniques that you might use to get regulated, right? When are you going to use them? Oh, this is going to help you. So maybe you want to use grounding techniques. Okay, those are great. It slows the dissociation, right? Reduces the anxiety symptoms. Cons, sometimes it's better to stay dissociated. Remember how we were talking about when you start to dial into your body, right? Your body can start to just, wow, bring up all this stuff because your body's storing it and you've been ignoring it. I like that it rhymes. I didn't mean it to rhyme. Your body's storing it and you've been ignoring it. Wow. I love words and how they rhyme. Okay, so emotional release, right? That might be awesome. Great for anger and fear, but not good for every situation. Some people might think you're crazy or acting out. You can't do it at work, right? You have to be selective. So this is another great slide for figuring out, what grounding strategy or emotional release or self-love or thought challenge, right? Thought challenge, that's stage 2. So you write down your negative thoughts, right? And then you challenge them. Is this true? But you can't do that when you're dysregulated, right? So anyway, there you go. Love that slide. Here we go. Here's another one. Always be curious. This is great for stage 2 trauma recovery stuff, right? So trauma shows up in your life as procrastination, resistance, right? Have you heard this one? What you resist persists. Okay. Brain fog, not feeling good enough, feel fear of failure, right? Trouble asking for help, fear of success. You got a plan for everything. You're scattered in your thoughts, okay? So this is how trauma can show up in your life, and you understand that now, right? Dysregulation leads to a certain thought pattern. Those thought patterns get ingrained, and then you want to try and shift them, okay? So you want to always be curious. Always be curious. You think that to yourself. Curiosity is a great, I'm curious. Why am I feeling this way? I'm curious about this experience, okay? So curiosity is a lot better than just sort of like diving down the rabbit hole or just embracing everything that you're thinking like it's real, right? So limiting beliefs are often at the root of patterns, right? The beliefs kept you safe and now you're ready to move past them. And the pattern can be the thing, right, that you want to look at because it's what you want to break to move forward. So who maybe you haven't heard of the stages of change model. Okay, so the stages of change model is something that we talk about a lot in mental health. So there's these 5 stages. Is there 5? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Pre-contemplation is where you need to make a change, but you don't even maybe know that you need to. You're not even aware of it, right? Contemplation is where you start thinking about it, Determination, where you start planning for it. Action, you're doing, right? Relapse, common, you're going to relapse. And then you're going to get back in and do it all over again, right? And then if you don't relapse, you're going to maintain. And if you maintain for a long time, you move out of that stage of change. So this model, just basically the point of it is that relapse is part of the stages of change model. So even good change is hard. And this is why, right? And this is sort of the cycle. This is something you'll see if you're struggling more with your substance stuff. Okay. Anyway, again, another helpful slide if you want to revisit it. And this one, you can Google the stages of change model and really get into it if you care for it. Okay, we're talking about attachment a lot through here. Remember, we're going to go a little deeper in this video. So this slide, oh, I love this slide. Okay, so emotional regulation and attachment. Look at this slide. So we've got the chaos, we've got the rigidity, we've got the secure attachment at the bottom, right? And then we've also got the insecure attachment at the top. So that's what we often see, insecure attachment associated with addiction. And I want to tell you, addiction can be substance, but it can also be process. For those of you with perfectionism out there and you're judging those alcohol drinkers or those drug users, your perfectionism is a process addiction, and it is akin to another type of addiction. So don't be too judgy, right? Just everyone has their thing, right? Everyone has their thing. So when we have addiction, we do this cycle, right? Where we're preoccupied with something, we need it, we ritualize, we act out, and we have guilt and shame, right? There's this thing. Chaos, right? So when someone has a very dysregulated sympathetic nervous system, right? Often there's a lot of chaos associated with it. It's like memories, feelings, thoughts, physical sensations are just all over the place, right? Or, right, when someone is maybe not so sympathetically aroused, but more parasympathetically stuck in that hypoarousal state, right? They have their memories, their thoughts, their physical sensations, and their feelings are all very separate, right? It's all very compartmentalized. But what you're looking for is that secure attachment where there's an integrated self, right? The physical sensations, the memories, the feelings, the thoughts, they're manageable. You recognize them, they're different, right? They're not all jumbled up, or they're not in a cycle, right? Where you're in the memories, so you're trying to avoid them, so you're run from them, and then the physical sensations are no good, so you're acting out, whatever with your risk-taking behavior, and then your thoughts go to guilt and shame, and then your feelings are like, oh, I feel so bad, and then it's like, oh, I'm starting to think about those memories again, and around you go. So this slide, right? Remember, I talked about how with the sympathetic nervous system, because it's a social nervous system, we talk about the dorsal vagal nerve, the ventral vagal nerve. Okay, so that ventral vagal state is the state that we want to call homeostasis, that we want to call regulated, right? That we want to be in, because it helps us to integrate ourself, right? The disintegrated self, right? Rigid, compartmentalized. So, and shut down, right? So someone who's dealing with perfectionism and they've got a lot of rigidity in their life, they're actually shut down more than they're realizing, right? And then someone who's got a lot of chaos, they're overactivated, right? So you want to somewhere in the middle. Anyway, I love that slide. I could go on. So this is a slide that I think is important to talk about related to the work of Dr. Kristen Neff, and she talks about the fight, flight, freeze response in a different way than we've been, that I think is helpful. So in psychology, we just talk about things, we try to help define them so that they make more sense. So when your fight response is cued, right, your inner critic will stir up, and that's like we're really hard on ourselves about everything. And then as we've talked about in stage 2, in sessions part 1 and 2, right? Irrational beliefs fuel these faulty thinking, right? And it leads to these limiting beliefs, cognitive distortions. Right? Flight, right? Flight, the need to get away from people, situations, and places is paramount with this trauma response. So it leads to isolation, right? Social anxiety. I just need to be alone. I can't handle things, okay? freeze. So when you're in a frozen trauma response, in your brain, you can start to ruminate. This is the hallmark of that frozen trauma response. You know, when you're like a dog with a bone, you can't stop telling that story, right? You're just going on and on and on. You've told all your friends, but it doesn't give you any peace. You're not getting connection over it. You're dysregulated. You need support, but you're telling the story because you need people to validate that what happened or whatever is going on, right? So that's why I'm saying get regulated. Always focus on regulating your nervous system, because these patterns will stir up when you're dysregulated, right? You're dysregulated, you're going to start criticizing yourself. You're dysregulated, you're going to want to be alone. You're not going to be able to handle things, right? You're dysregulated, you're going to be ruminating on the things that people say that you don't like or the things that people do, right? And then when you're regulated, suddenly you don't care. It doesn't bother you. Right? So authenticity, it's key. Ooh, it's key. Attachment, authenticity, being yourself. Okay. So authenticity is our natural state of being. The authentic self is a state of being where we are centered, creative, adaptive, inspired. Right. That is where you want to rest in your nervous system. Okay. That's how you heal your trauma, not by like reliving it again and again and again, thinking that you're somehow going to make it so that it didn't happen. It happened, and I'm sorry. I'm so glad that you're this far along in video 7, right? So video 8, we're going to do the assessments and dial in a little deeper. Remember, you can revisit this video. This is the pinnacle video, right? Like we're talking about real deep stuff. So you might need to come back to this video. You go with what resonates. Stick with what resonates. We're building those filing cabinets. You're putting stuff in the filing cabinet. When you get more information in the filing cabinet than the filing cabinet can handle, you make new filing cabinets, right? Or you make new files in the filing cabinet. So, or you get a bigger cabinet. Like, you need to let the information wash over you, because that's how we learn, right? That's how we learn. We aren't born with this knowledge. We share it together. So anyway, thanks for coming this far, you guys. Looking forward to seeing you in video 8.